Yeah, so I would like to point out, although it says, and indeed I am the editor of BlockchainGamer.biz, blockchain gaming has nothing to do with this talk, so if you're interested in blockchain games, this is not the talk for you, please leave. So I'm a journalist, I work for lots of different sites, and I was a co-founder at Pocket Gamer and ran PocketGamer.biz for many years, so that's kind of the hat I'm wearing to interview Bernard. So we hear a lot, if you listen to Zynga and look at their press releases, you hear a lot about these kind of terms you use, forever franchises and bold beats. And these are kind of two terms that really coincided with Zynga's turnaround over the last 2 years. So can you kind of unpick what those phrases mean in terms of how Zynga operates its mobile games?
Okay, we're going to pass this mic around. So first, I'm really happy to be here. This actually marks my 2-year anniversary at Zynga, so I'm really, really happy to be here in front of you guys. And then also, I made it 2 years at Zynga, so that's also a big achievement. Previous to Zynga, I spent 10 years at Electronic Arts, and like Dale talked about, I am a passionate mobile gamer. So in my own free time, I spend maybe 2 to 3 hours playing video games a day, either with my kids or by myself. I call it exploration and research, and my wife calls it something else, maybe a little bit of a personal addiction, but I really love the space that we're in, and it gets more and more exciting every single day. Hearing the folks like Voodoo on stage, previous to me jumping on stage, it's just really exciting and inspiring to see what's happening in the evolution of the space and the emergence of new players. So that's really, really exciting for us. 2 years ago, when this new management team took over Zynga, we embarked on a vision around a turnaround and a comeback. We had what I consider a wealth of tremendous amount of assets, franchises, cash on our balance sheets, a lot of experience with regards to going after the space. And we chose a route to go down and focus on our forever franchises, Words with Friends, CSR, and Zynga Poker. We believe that was the right strategy at the time to reinforce what we're working on with players that we had existing within our platform. These player relationships are incredibly important. Zynga as a company has tens of millions of daily active users that are playing and touching our software every single day. We care about these players, and the whole vision for us was, how do we focus on these players and maximize those experiences? What's exciting about us is in Words with Friends, we actually decided to go down a route of introducing new features within our games, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of our launch strategy of those new features. In Zynga Poker, we really focused on those daily experiences, and we listened to our players, and we focused on daily challenges. We focused on new table experiences that enhance those player relationships. And then 2 years ago, we launched the next iteration of CSR, CSR2, and we really focused on bold beats and how do we deliver experiences that are amazing for our players every single day.
Just kind of coming back into this bold beat, so Csr Racing 2 we're going to talk about a little bit. Bold beats is kind of a more impressive term for an update, isn't it, really? What's your kind of thinking around how many updates you kind of would run into a game and how frequently you would do that to give the audience an idea about how often these big beats hit?
So in CSR, we launch several bold beats a quarter, and we do it in a cadence that players are comfortable with. When we launched CSR, I would say that was a whirlwind of activity 2 years ago. We made sure that all pistons were pumping within our publisher stack, but in that moment of launching a new game, and throughout my history in mobile, I've launched a lot of mobile games. You have a little bit of that quiet after the storm, and that usually lasts about 2 weeks, where we can kind of think, iterate, listen to players, and then we quickly need to launch features that players are going to enjoy and love. In the case of CSR, we really focused on exciting new cars that we can bring within our platforms. And then we actually brought in large intellectual property like Fast and Furious. And then now we're really focused on amazing social features like guilds. So it's very, very exciting about what we're doing in CSR. But the timing really is centered about what players want and how often they want that. And we want to find that fine line with regards to delivering what players really want, but not delivering too much or too excessively.
Okay, so I guess maybe talking a bit on this kind of idea of forever franchises. So it wasn't that long ago, I think, that in mobile, the big gaming companies were really focused on, developing and launching new games, and that was kind of where the focus was. But today, if you look at kind of the key kind of players, certainly in the Western market, so Zynga, EA, King, Glue, I mean, even Supercell, they've kind of taken a step back from new games, or kind of, in the case of Supercell, kind of struggling to find, how a new game can kind of fit its audience. So, why do you think, because it's not just Zynga in its turnaround phase has kind of got this idea of forever franchises, it seems to be something that most of the big mobile games companies are now kind of focusing on what they've got and worrying less about, the potential of what could be. Why do you think that's happened across the whole industry, not just, the products you've got?
I think a couple years ago, anytime we would do press or we'd answer questions about a portfolio of publishing assets, the question would always center around what's new and what's coming next. I think that there has been an evolution with regards to the way that publishers as well as game makers are thinking about new as well as their existing franchises. And Zynga definitely has taken more of a focus on our existing and forever franchises and what big bold beats are coming within Words with Friends or CSR or Zynga Poker. Our space is continuing this evolutionary space, but I would say for us, our focus really has centered around existing franchises, but at the same time, everyone in the space, all those companies that you mentioned are working on new games. We're maybe working on games and kind of keeping it a little bit under the radar, but every one of us is working on really exciting new games as well, and Zynga is one of those companies. With regards to the things that we've announced a couple games that are in soft launch for us, as well as our latest release, Words with Friends 2, has been received incredibly well by the marketplace, but we are working on new, and it is something that we are focused on as well.
Yeah, annoyingly, although I have asked you several times, you're not going to announce any new games today, although you have kind of announced the kind of categories you're working in, and we know there's new stuff at Natural Motion and your new studio in Helsinki. So what do you think at the moment, given the market situation, what does it take to engineer a hit, and how important is marketing to kind of, take a good product or a great product to get it, to an audience that makes it a successful commercial product?
Well, the first thing that is the most important is an amazing studio that can build amazing software that can touch players worldwide. I would say that with regards to figuring out if you have a hit or if you don't have a hit, that becomes more and more important today than it ever has been. Launching a new game is a very expensive and it's wrought with risk, to put it mildly. So, I mean, I actually look at launching a new game in the marketplace, it's a little bit of a gamble. There's a tremendous amount of competition. There's a tremendous amount of areas where things can go poorly. So, I mean, even for Zynga, for example, we had a big game called Mafia Wars that was in soft launch. We weighed that out of launching it worldwide. We looked at all of the different kind of great points of the games and then also the risks of launching that game in the marketplace. And in that case, we decided to actually sunset the game in soft launch. I would say for us, right now, it's a case where we have to make the right decisions for our players at the right time.
So we're going to talk a bit about CSR Racing too now, which is, over the last years has been the real driver of kind of growth and a really big hit for you guys. So as the game has kind of matured, I guess we can say, you've really started to hook into the kind of the real life manufacturers. So you've done deals already with Lamborghini and Ferrari and Porsche coming up this year. And away from CSR, Zynga Poker's also announced a deal with World Poker Tour. So why are these kind of real-world kind of branding deals kind of so important for those games?
So, we're really excited about some of the intellectual property we've brought into our Forever franchises. For our players, it's all about authenticity, and that's the feedback that we've received from our players. In CSR Racing, the amount of time that players play the game and actually spend time in the garage is so important. So a lot of our players actually spend a ton of time in their garages looking at each pixel and every detail about each of their individual cars. I'm actually one of those players myself. I spend a lot of time actually looking inside my Bugatti Chiron, picturing me actually owning one of these cars. I open up the dash, I look inside, I play with the radio. I have this experience that I absolutely love, and that authenticity is so important. So bringing in a rip-off Bugatti or a rip-off Lamborghini just wouldn't do our players justice. So we make sure that we have the proper licenses to bring players back into our games. Fast and Furious is a great example of that. It's really big intellectual property that's mainstream, and then gives this really amazing player arc that says, hey, you can play with characters that are actually from the films and the real authentic cars, and that authenticity drives a really fantastic player experience. Later this year, we're actually launching World Poker Tour within Zynga Poker, and that's an incredible tournament experience that drives the authenticity of winning a real World Poker Tour bracelet. I happened to be on the floor at a World Poker Tour tournament, and just seeing the excitement of these players where anyone can enter and then have this incredible experience of trying to win be the best in the world in an experience is really fantastic. And that's that type of authenticity and excitement we want to bring into our real world games.
So I guess the third of your big Forever franchises, Words with Friends, now 8 years old. And it's always been like massive in terms of audience, always been effectively, it's free ad-supported game. And last year you took, what could be seen as a fairly radical step. You have done sequels before, but you announced for the first time Words with Friends 2. And that was a product that you'd looked at and thought, how can we make, I guess, more competitive play, and how does that link into in-app purchases? So, what kind of thinking was going on inside Zynga? Because in a sense, it could have gone horribly wrong, because you could have alienated, a big existing audience. So how did you kind of think about that process, and how's it gone so far? It came out, was it December last year?
Thanks for bringing up our Words with Friends 2 launch, which was a really successful launch for Zynga. In retrospect, I actually look over at the last 2 years, and we had a tremendous amount of debate internally about, should we do a big, massive update to Words with Friends 2, or should we relaunch the game and title it Words with Friends 2? In this specific case, if you actually look at the history of the franchise, it launched in the App Store. It launched 2 years ago. No, it launched 8 years ago, and has achieved over 250 million installs, which is pretty amazing. It's a top 10 free game in the marketplace, and I think all of us either play the game or have friends or family that play the game pretty excessively. I currently have about 50 games going at once right now, and part of what I think of when I think of, has this game been successful for us as a relaunch? It's when a lot of my high school friends that I grew up playing, on the schoolyards with, are they playing this digital platform game called Words with Friends? And I've seen a lot more of my high school friends light up back on Words with Friends since we relaunched the game in December. Why did we end up doing a brand new game entitled Words with Friends 2? It really came down to the product. We had 2 amazing new features that we launched within the game. One of them that is actually called a solo challenge, so you're not playing with your friends, you're actually playing through a pretty cool story arc of, achieving different bosses and kind of and playing by yourself when you're not playing with your friends. And then another one is a team battle mode, where 8 players are playing at once, and it's synchronous gameplay, and it's super, super exciting. It's kind of like this hair-raising moment within a franchise that you know and love that's really, really exciting, with incredible shifts in scoring and battle. You know, for us to launch this properly in the marketplace, we actually did need a new binary. So technologically, it was the best thing for us to do to launch a brand new game. But then in a case, we also could showcase our new publishing stack and a new publishing platform that we have at Zynga, really centered around best-in-class user acquisition, communications, product marketing. We actually featured a two television commercials that were received incredibly well with players, that kind of struck at the emotions of why players are playing Words with Friends. And in launching the game, we actually achieved the #1 free app and the #1 free game position on both Google and Apple Play. So it was a really exciting moment. We could kind of re-spark people to think about Words with Friends. And in America, we had this really amazing kind of press story that launched pretty small, and then it went completely viral around Roz and Spencer playing Words with Friends. And it's a very unlikely matchup of an 80-year-old retiree and a 20-something-year-old rapper in Brooklyn playing this game and just building this amazing friendship and relationship where they started transferring life stories. And they actually both jumped on a plane and they met up in person and had this really incredible moment. And I don't think that would have happened if we hadn't relaunched the game in the marketplace. So it's something that we were really excited about.
Have you seen any kind of differences in audience between the two games? So Words with Friends 2 has a bit more of a kind of competitive, or more competitive modes. It also has the solo modes, as you say, but there's a more competitive kind of edge to it, kind of built into it, really, in a way. Has that changed the audience in terms of gender split or age split at all, or is that kind of too early to tell?
Right now, there's nuanced changes of gameplay. Like John mentioned, in the second iteration, we actually have in-app purchase in the game, so people are engaging in buying coins, some forms of power-ups, and then also extension within solo gameplay. So we are seeing a slightly kind of nuanced, more younger audience jumping into Words with Friends 2. We're actually seeing a pretty significant inflection in player base is the folks that are playing Words with Friends in our chat games. So in our chat games, we're actually seeing a younger audience that are playing Words with Friends within Messenger. It's easier to maybe pick up and play. You don't have to download an app binary, and players are jumping in pretty quickly, and they're experiencing our gameplay within chat.
So, I mean, chat is one of the future areas, one of the kind of areas for the future that you hope is going to bring dividends, and you're investing quite heavily in that. How are you finding kind of chat as a platform? It has lots of opportunity, has maybe some structural problems in terms of how people onboard and how people are retained in the game. It's early, I guess, but how are you finding it so far? Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, chat is very early, so it's something that Zynga, we are excited about. Our vision and our mission really centers around connecting the world through games. And when we look at different platform technologies, those platform technologies that help enable connecting players quickly through fun experiences, that's something we get very, very excited about. So we invested pretty early within iMessage and then in Western markets on chat platforms like Facebook Messenger. Since we've kind of embarked on this mission, we've launched over 25 games, and there's going to be more that's coming. So we're really excited about where the space is going. Like you mentioned in Words with Friends, there is a new player audience that's jumping into our games. So they're younger, they're a different demographic, and in some cases, this is the first time they've actually played Words with Friends. So it's a really exciting space, but I actually think of the chat platforms similar to the way that the early days of mobile are. We've both been in mobile for a very long time, and there's a little bit of that nuance of, throwing different types of spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's really, really fun for Zynga. And it kind of brings back a lot of that kind of good feelings of the early days of mobile where we were launching, not a couple games a year, but we were launching several games a month. So that's kind of the view and the vision that we have around chat. I would say for our organization, we keep the games that are in development as well as our development on chat separate from the rest of Zynga, and they are probably move at a different pace and speed than the rest of the company does. They can take more chances, they can launch quicker, they can launch a lot of different types of games on the platform, and that's something that's very, very exciting for us.
No, absolutely. Because I guess, as I've kind of alluded to a couple of times in this chat, the broad trajectory of mobile is kind of growing, but kind of certainly in the West, kind of maturing. It's kind of this kind of weird dichotomy that these two things are happening at the same time. One way of kind of getting growth in that case is mergers and acquisitions, and actually Zynga's been pretty active last year. So you did 2 acquisitions, $150 million between those 2 acquisitions. How have those kind of acquisitions kind of helped growth, and how do you see the mobile games sector in terms of M&A going forward? Because I guess in journalistic speak, we're definitely in what we can sort of call a consolidation phase. Do you see that continuing, or will things like chat kind of break it all up again?
I definitely think there will be further M&A and consolidation activities in this space. It's an area that Zynga is really excited about. As long as it fits within our strategy of forever franchises and driving acquisition that's going to help in sectors and genres that we perform well in. The 2 acquisitions that you referred to is we bought a solitaire games company, and then we bought the Peak card games division in Turkey. In this case, by doing those acquisitions, we have the largest casual cards portfolio in the world, anchored by Zynga Poker. What's incredibly exciting about those acquisitions is they've been accretive on day one. They've been further bolstering our larger corporate strategy. But in the case of the Peak Card Game Studio, I was actually just recently out in Istanbul, and we just see an incredibly enthusiastic and high quality game studio that's super psyched to be part of Zynga. I happened to do a studio tour and walkthrough, and there was a ton of smiles, and people are really, really excited to be part of Zynga. And that's what we want, is doing M&A that fits our corporate strategy, but also bringing in amazing studios that are excited to be part of Zynga and our potential future.
Cool. So we've spoken, looking a little bit more towards the future, we've spoken about Zynga investing in chat games. Another thing you've been quite bullish about is augmented reality, which launched on Apple last year and had quite a lot of games coming out on it, but there's kind of maybe a question mark about whether the audience was ready for them. How do you see AR developing? So far, the big launch for you guys was within CSR 2. You could look at your cars in AR. How's that gone? And is that how you see AR going, within existing games, or is there a space for kind of AR games on mobile as well? How's that going to play out?
I mean, I would say for AR, we really haven't seen that breakout experience yet, where AR is the center of the game. I think we've seen some really kind of cool things within existing games like Pokemon Go and others, where AR is like kind of a side experience that could be fun, that you can turn off on, and it's like an opt-in experience. And primarily that's been designed for players. When it comes to CSR, we've offered an experience within our games that launched most recently on Android. So when you're in your garage and you experience these cars, you actually can flip on a little switch, and then we could place a Bugatti Chiron right here on stage. And it's a pretty amazing experience. I actually just recently did it yesterday. So I went on an afternoon walk yesterday after I landed on my plane from LA, and was walking by a hotel in Hyde Park, and I saw this lineup of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royce, and then I laid out my car right next to the car, and it's definitely mine because I have a personalized license plate on my CSR car, and it just made me feel really great that I could, bring this kind of fantasy experience that I have within my garage in CSR, and then bring it into the real world, and I of course took a picture, and then I didn't post it on social media, but I sent it to the studio head, Julian, and we both got really excited about it because it's a really amazing experience. But for Zynga, we are focused on new tech, new platforms that I think our players want. And are we putting AR in the center of a game experience? Not yet, but we're constantly exploring new opportunities in doing that.
Okay, so we see a lot of kind of headlines about kind of mobile game kind of growth as a sector, and it always seems to be these figures are going up kind of almost like wildly. But also, I guess some of the kind of smaller kind of mobile companies are kind of seeing more competition, and we kind of discussed there's fewer games being launched, and kind of the games from the big companies that are out there kind of seem to be where the growth is. I mean, can we kind of square these two things? Is it still an exciting space, no matter how big a company is? Is it still a space for kind of startups to kind of find something bigger than a niche? What advice would you kind of give for people looking, if you're doing a game startup now, would mobile be the place to be, or would you advise somewhere else?
I would say, and I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I would say that the space is a lot different today than it was 5 or 6 years ago for indie developers and indie publishers. The most exciting part about mobile, as you scour the charts and you look at top grossing and top free, the charts look a lot differently than it did 2 years ago. 2 years ago, there kind of wasn't a lot of change in the top 10 games. You saw the same games and the same publishers, and there wasn't that much shift. Now you jump onto the App Store today, you have a Peak Game Studio in Turkey that's doing incredibly well. You have Fortnite that's #1 on the chart. I mean, if you had told me 2 years ago that a first-person shooter, free-to-play, cross-platform game would be dominating on the mobile charts, I'd probably scratch my head. So, the industry has a tremendous amount of ability and to flip on its head, and that's what's so exciting. I think every single developer has a chance of figuring out what the next Flappy Birds could be, or the next Helix Jump could be, or all those different, different types of gameplay, or the next Fortnite. I'd say that, the space, though, is more challenging. When launching a new game, I think you have to think about engineering a hit. That requires more player feedback, more feedback from players early and often, and then centering around a publishing strategy that has proper UA, that has proper product marketing, that has proper go-to-market strategy, and also be able to financially withstand the storm that is launching that game. When we at Zynga think about launching a game, we think of that moment of launching a game as the start of a battle, and in this case, a long-term war. We think about forever franchises, and we think about games that are going to stand the test of time and be in players' hands more than 10 years, like Zynga Poker has. So when we launch a game, it starts with that moment in time, but then it's time to start thinking about reinforcing that with marketing, with bold beats, with activities, IP, and franchises that can help harden that experience for players.